Hello, you're watching Eye on Africa. I'm James Creedon. Let's get a catch-up on the top stories from across the continent this Monday. A dramatic U-turn in the opposition camp in DR Congo as the country gears up for a presidential election in December. Marin Fayulu had been agreed as the common opposition candidate, but on Monday the deal was torn up. We'll bring you the latest. And the last 4 captives have walked free, marking the end of a kidnapping crisis in Cameroon. 79 students were taken captive a week ago in the English-speaking part of the country. The motive remains a mystery. And emojis are ever more popular in online communications, but in Ivory Coast, a whole set of emojis specific to the country are growing in popularity. We'll attempt to translate them. Thanks for watching. Now straight to our top story. Ahead of December's presidential election, opposition leaders had voted on Sunday to back a joint candidate, Marin Fayulu. Then on Monday evening, one of the opposition frontrunners, Felix Tshisekedi, backtracked, this under pressure from his supporters. He now says he will maintain his own candidacy. Nicolas Germain has more.
The agreement signed in Geneva only lasted 24 hours. On Sunday evening, Congo's opposition leaders voted to choose a joint candidate in next month's presidential election. They backed Marin Fayulu, who had not been the favourite. But on Monday evening, Felix Tshisekedi, the leading opposition figure according to the latest opinion poll, did a spectacular U-turn. He left the deal, saying he had to respect the members of his UDPS party. Earlier in Kinshasa, they had protested angrily in front of their party headquarters.
We will never accept to support a small fry like Fayulu. He doesn't have a base. He comes from a small political party. How do you explain this?
Then the party's Secretary-General upped the pressure on Tshisekedi.
The UDPS party of Tshisekedi, represented by his large base here, strongly rejects the declaration and signature in Geneva.
Hours later, Tshisekedi said he had to listen to his grassroots and he would no longer support Fayulu. Another opposition leader, Vital Kamerhe, later said he was also withdrawing from the Geneva agreement. The fact the opposition no longer have a joint candidate is good news for Emmanuel Shadari. He was chosen by President Joseph Kabila's ruling party to take part in the election. Kabila has governed Congo for the last 17 years.
And staying in the Democratic Republic of Congo, authorities there are battling the latest outbreak of the deadly Ebola virus. The health ministry said over 200 people have died in North Kivu and Ituri provinces in the second outbreak this year. Containing Ebola is notoriously difficult. Carriers of the virus can appear healthy and yet spread the disease for weeks before symptoms appear. Peter O'Brien has more.
Excuse? Combien de temps? 5 mois. D'accord. Ok, pas de souci. On va essayer de trouver.
It's the biggest ever outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo and the third worst in history. Around 300 cases of Ebola have been confirmed in the northeast of the country since August, and there have been over 200 deaths, more than in the world's first Ebola epidemic in 1976.
My thoughts and my prayers go to the hundreds of families grieving, to the hundreds of orphans and the families which have been wiped out.
Armed groups in the region are hindering aid efforts. The health minister says response teams have faced attacks, kidnappings and having their equipment destroyed. 2 medical staff have even been killed. The area affected, around the city of Beni, borders 3 other countries. Uganda has begun vaccinating some of its health workers in case the virus spreads. The World Health Organization says, however, that there isn't yet a global emergency. Lessons have been learnt from previous Ebola epidemics on the continent, including the devastating outbreak in West Africa from 2013 to 2016. 25,000 people in the DRC have already been inoculated, some with an experimental new vaccine.
Now, commuting in gridlocked Nairobi is a challenge at the best of times, but now it has been further complicated by strict rules for buses that have seen many halt their services. Kenyan law requires minibus taxis known as matatus to have seatbelts and install devices to limit their speed. Now, while the rules were ignored for years, the authorities have recently launched a crackdown on the frequent dangerous driving practices of buses. Many commuters, though, have been left stranded.
There is a big transport problem today. I have been here for over an hour, and I have not been able to move. I am still trying to figure out what to do. Motorbikes and taxis are really too expensive.
We would like the government to soften their stance on the issue, and while it does so, those in the transport industry should also step up and try to comply with the rules to ensure that the situation is back to normal.
And after weeks of uncertainty, Gabon's presidency admitted on Sunday that President Ali Bongo is in a critical condition. He has been in hospital in Saudi Arabia for 3 weeks. According to the French newspaper Le Monde, he suffered a stroke. Gabon's authorities have remained silent on the reason behind his hospitalisation, but they did say his health is improved and that he is recovering most of his functions. A kidnapping crisis has come to an end in Cameroon. A week after 79 students were taken captive, the abduction took place in Bamenda, in the English-speaking part of mostly francophone Cameroon. The head teacher was amongst 4 of the final captives to be released on Monday. The motivation behind the kidnapping remains a mystery, with no group having claimed responsibility. Our team on the ground sent us this report.
Since the kidnap of at least 75 students and 2 teachers last week, the Presbyterian Secondary School Nkwen in the northwest region of Cameroon is ghost-like. An uneasy calm reigns around the shut school gate.
When you look at the door here, you see that the door was broken.
The institution's supervisor, Marin, was amongst the first to arrive in the dormitory where students were abducted by a mysterious commando. She is still in shock.
I feel very, very disappointed. My heart is bleeding and I'm sick, just like other colleagues and some parents. Even though they have taken the children home, they feel very bad.
It is still a mystery how over 75 people disappeared in a region under heavy military surveillance. That they resurfaced 48 hours later is even more stunning. These images taken by an amateur videographer pictures the return of the ex-hostages to the city. The video throws more light on their itinerary and the demands of their captors.
Every minute we were changing position. We never even knew where we were. We never had an idea. They were telling us that we should feel free around them and that we should not be afraid that they will not do anything to us, but that they are going to take us home to our parents safely. But the only thing that they say is that we should not come to school because as of now in the country, there is no peace.
Since the kidnap of the students, the close to 1,000 other students of PSS Nkwen College have gone home to their parents. Like scores of schools in the English-speaking regions of Cameroon, the school has shut down. Separatist fighters calling for the secession of the 2 English-speaking regions of Cameroon from the mostly French 8 other regions of the country have targeted schools since the start of the Anglophone crisis.
It goes without any fear of contradiction that schools have actually been taken hostage. I believe that through education, freedom can always be achieved, even if there is tyranny.
Meantime, the principal of the school, a teacher and 2 students who were still in captivity were released this Monday. It is not clear who is behind the mass kidnap as no group has so far claimed responsibility. But schools have been targeted by separatist fighters who are using the school boycotts to push government into granting their secession requests.
Next to Ivory Coast and a set of emojis specific to the West African country. They were created by a 21-year-old graphic designer and provide a window into cultural traits, cuisine and more. The emojis continue to grow in popularity. Frank Hersey has more.
The daily lives of the people of Ivory Coast, captured in 365 emojis. Producing a new design every day for a year was a mission Oplero Grebe set himself.
I started off with the food in Ivory Coast. Futu, fufu, bisap. Well, I'm Ivorian, and this is what I like to eat. I love eating.
From Gaba, a dish made of manioc and tuna, to the brightly coloured wara communal taxis that ply the streets, the graphic design student has captured hundreds of elements that make up daily life. Even the gestures and body language people use here.
This is cheer. It's what you say when you're shocked. It's when you're surprised, but in a negative way.
His work was an instant hit. He's got over 9,000 Instagram followers and another 5,000 on Facebook. And Canal Plus even used his designs in their coverage of the World Cup. His family still can't quite believe it.
Every day he's got a few more followers, more and more people supporting him. We're all telling him to keep it real and not let it get to his head. With all this media attention, we don't want him getting a big head.
Cool-headed he may be, but this budding entrepreneur is still looking for opportunities. Next step, printing his emojis on t-shirts and bags.
Crossing the continent, thousands of Ethiopians and Eritreans took part in a 10-kilometre reconciliation run on Sunday. Now, it's the first joint sporting event since a diplomatic thaw between the neighbours in July. After a deadly war in the 90s and lingering tensions that followed that, borders have now been opened and relations are being reset. Participants in the run applauded the spirit of the event. Let's take a listen.
I'm very happy. I don't know how I can properly express my happiness to you. There's nothing more than love, reconciliation, and happiness in this world. I'm very happy.
I am happy with the opening of the border. My brother has come back to Ethiopia after 20 years and we met.
All right, on that positive note, thanks for watching this edition of Eye on Africa. Do stay tuned. More news coming up shortly.